Good evening, happiness seekers. We're going to continue on with our list of things you can do by Briggs Myers type. So, if you've been following this so far, the main premise is that humanity is not all the same. We have definite personality types. Whether they are because of nature and nurture or both or neither is immaterial as far as this is concerned. We are just looking at this list that I found of things that you can do in your spare time to relieve stress. That's the important thing. We're trying to find things to do which are suitable for us, a good fit for our personality type, in order to take our mind off things, practice mindfulness perhaps, but certainly take our mind off the day-to-day stress in our workplace and any other situation, so that we can find a little bit of fulfillment. So if the Briggs Myers test says that you are suited to manufacturing roles, then this list it gives reasons why, which I've been mocking, and maybe I should stop, but because it's easy to mock, isn't it? But the reasons are what you would expand if you were writing a resume or a curriculum vitae, a CV. Why employers reading the hobby section would say, oh, well, this shows that blah, 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 is they seem to use the word focused quite a lot. So anyway, if you're involved in manufacturing, I can't see why this would only be for manufacturing people, but cycling. I presume that means both urban cycling and mountain cycling. And again, I don't know why it thinks that this shows that you're passionate and focused. I would say you have to be focused in order to stay alive, but unless it's a kind of Tour de France type of cycling, in which case you'd have to be not passionate's the word, but you'd have to be very, very driven. Hiking, again, it says that you have a clear head. I'm going to leave these out because these comments are just, somebody made this up to pad out the article, I think. Hiking, why that's suitable for, forget about the manufacturing role. I don't also think that anybody's personality would suit them best for a job in manufacturing in a factory where you're just picking up widgets and doing something to them and putting them down again. I've done that in a brewery and also in Goodyear's when it existed in the United Kingdom in Wolverhampton, and I was in quality control. It was one of the better jobs, and it was still horrible. Model building. Okay, I can see the connection there. And model building would involve anything from little steam models to Lego and related things. Train sets, if you're into that. Model villages. Airfix models, they may have other names, but model airplanes, that kind of thing. People who do ships and bottles, all that kind of stuff. Paper making, this is a very crafts sort of thing. Paper making is fascinating. I've always thought it would be nice to have a go at that, but I've never gotten around to it. But I've seen the process on YouTube, and it looks like it could be fascinating. You just need a lot of patience. Squash, see, totally unrelated to manufacturing. And if you're in manufacturing, you see the reason given here, you're highly competitive and motivated. Why would anybody working in manufacturing be competitive? It's not something you need to be competitive at. You need to be very, very patient. You need to be able to just blank out, switch off, and just pick something up, do something to it, process it in some way like a robot and put it down again. Woodworking, again, that's model building, but the model would be a table or a chair, or so I presume that means carpentry, and that not only means building furniture, but also making repairs and skirting boards and coving, and if you're that way inclined, and I know it's very, very difficult, making staircases, repairing window frames in old buildings. upcycling. Upcycling is fascinating, and if you are intrigued by the word, why is it different from recycling, and you've not heard of this before, and I certainly hadn't 12 months ago, upcycling is where you take something which may be used, or maybe you buy it new. We'll take an example of a jam jar, and you turn it into something else. So a jam jar could be filled with wax and a wick and turned into a candle. It could be turned into a mini lantern. You could fill it with mini soaps and give it as a gift. There are a lot of things you could do with a jam jar. I've given you two. Yes, I know that's not a lot. Do you want me to? Do you really? You could fill it with sweeties and give it as a gift. You could use it as a vase. I know somebody who used it. She didn't want to buy wine glasses because where she was, the country she was in, the wine glasses were expensive. But jam jars and pickle jars they came free with the pickles and the jams. And of course, you can use it to make jams. And you can store spices in there. You can use them for many, many, many purposes. Okay. Media roles. So if you're given to media roles, I don't know why you would do amateur radio in your spare time, but there you go. Unless maybe I misread the article. Maybe you're applying for these roles. So you're applying for a media job, a manufacturing job, and these hobbies show why you're suited towards that, rather than, well, no, but that still applies. It means that these are suited towards your temperament if you are in that kind of job and you are enjoying it. So if you've got a media job, it's saying that amateur radio would be a pure street, which I should hope so. But would you want to do it on the weekend? Maybe you would. Maybe you love your job so much, in which case you just stay at work and carry on. Blogging, okay, is an extension of that. Calligraphy. You might want to consider calligraphy. And calligraphy, it doesn't have to be just with a pen, it can be with a brush, and you can make those big Chinese and Korean and Japanese artworks, which are very beautiful to look at. Creative writing, okay. I can recommend a YouTube channel involved with that. Yes, and creative writing doesn't only have to involve short stories, it can also involve creative non-fiction. Okay, we've just breached the 8 minutes, so I'll just race through this. Crosswords and Sudoku and word search puzzles. Well, if that's your thing, there's plenty of those on Amazon, and there's loads you can download for free if you know where to look. Surfing. Okay, don't exactly see the connection there, but surfing is a hobby and any kind of water sport. So I would never have occurred to that way back when I was saying get a pastime to relieve your stress. Water sports are just not me. I don't like water very much. It comes to swimming, and so there's swimming, diving, surfing, water skiing, jet skiing. Yeah, jet skiing's fun. And also, if you've got waterways, like Holland and Britain certainly do, barging or long boating or whatever they're called, narrow boating, and travelling. Well, of course, travelling is a nice hobby, but it's not something you can do every single weekend. But you could visit nearby cities and things, I suppose. Okay, 9.5 minutes, right. We will continue tomorrow, so, it's the last one tomorrow. Science roles. I'll very, very quickly blast through these. Okay, this is the last one that is suggested. Amateur astronomy, and you can get apps for your phone. You point them at the sky and it tells you what constellations are there, and then you can read up about them. And there's nearly always nowadays some breakthrough being found out about, like rust on the moon the other day, water trails on Mars, all kinds of stuff. It's fascinating. Collecting. Okay, collecting anything. We all collect something, really, even if it's just ties or cufflinks, or that's masculine. What would ladies collect? Apart from the obvious stereotype of collecting shoes, what ladies collect? I'll leave that to the ladies. I've got no idea. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just, what do guys collect? I don't. I've got a couple of guitars, but that's it. I don't really collect very much. I don't like clutter very much because it leads to stress, and you get overly attached to things, and that also leads to stress. Gardening. That's a very good pastime, and it doesn't have to be outdoors. There's bonsais, indoor plants, air plants, those little succulents. So orchids, people grow orchids indoors. I'm going to relate to that. It's not been here, but certain types of pets, low maintenance pets, which would include aquaria, fish and that kind of thing, which are very soothing to look at, and therefore reduce your stress level. They're hypnotic. Watching fish go back. And genealogy. Okay, I never would have thought of that in a million years. Genealogy, if you want to trace your ancestry, there's a lot of support for that online at the moment. Marathon running. Well, that would go with sports, I think. It's a solitary sport, admittedly, but I understand from people who do take up jogging and marathon running that they get addicted to it, and the problem is that you've got to be careful with the cartilage in your knees. I wouldn't want to recommend something or read something out and it led to more stress in your life, but the cartilage in your knees, you've got to be very careful with that. I know quite a few people who've taken up running, and they like the endorphins. They get very high on it, and then the next thing is their knees are giving them a lot of problems. They have to give it up, and they are devastated. Recycling. Okay, again, if you combine that with upcycling and turning it into repurposing, then that can be great. But other than that, recycling is mandatory in a lot of countries, so I can't see how that would be necessarily a hobby. But you can recycle clothes. You can go to charity shops, get clothes. I know some people who do that, and they take 2 or 3 jackets and turn them into something relatively new, and then they sell them online, and they make quite a profit out of it. And then sailing, which I mentioned before as a water sport, but that would have been with surfing for manufacturing people, was it? I can't remember. Anyway, okay, so that's the end of that little thread, so we will begin something else tomorrow. Hope you got some ideas there of things that you can do to lower your stress levels in your free time. I've rabbited on now for 13 going on 14 minutes, so I'm going to end this quite fast. And I will say a good night to you. And as usual, if you found it useful in any way, please consider liking and subscribing. It would mean a lot to the algorithm, because that way it would have a clue whether you found this useful or not. Maybe you didn't. That's okay. Don't subscribe. If you did find it useful and you haven't already hit like, then please consider doing so. And here's to your greater happiness. I will speak to you tomorrow.